In October 2015, at the historic Willow Run World War II Ford bomber plant, over 2,000 women broke the Guinness World Record for most Rosie the Riveters in one location. The iconic image of Rosie doing her part to build the arsenal of democracy continues to be an inspiration to women of all ages around the world. Digging Detroit's special guest host, University of Detroit Mercy history professor Gregory Sumner, shares his new book, Detroit in World War II, and takes us on a special visit to the home of one of the original Rosies, Marjorie Walters of Ypsilanti.
Hi, I'm Pete Kalinsky. Welcome back to Digging Detroit and continuing on with our ongoing series of guest hosts. I'm with Professor Greg Sumner here at University of Detroit Mercy. Greg, welcome back to Digging Detroit.
Thank you, Pete. Great to be here, and hello, Digging Detroit.
Some of you may remember listening to Greg talk about his recently released book, Detroit During World War II. Now, one of the most important stories is the story of Rosie the Riveter.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about Rosie.
Well, Rosie is a mythical figure, an icon who has legs, and I mean in the sense of endurance. I often talk about my 20-year-old college students who don't know a lot of history, but I sometimes take this to class. Everybody knows who that is, particularly the young women. That's an icon in our culture. And obviously symbolizes female power. It was adopted by the feminist movement in the 60s. It's a great icon.
Right.
And the idea was we had such a labor shortage that in some plants, for instance, Willow Run, 1/3 of the workforce were women doing heavy jobs.
Right, and they were doing basically all the men's work, all of the same work.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say every job. Some just required a certain amount of strength or whatever, but they were riveting. There was Wendy the welder. They were getting their hands dirty. And initially, actually, they were hired for precision tasks because women are supposed to be better at that. Pretty soon, they were doing the heavy stuff.
Right, right. Now, recently they set the world's record for Rosies at the Willow Run Yankee Air Museum.
As it should be. Those people in California, we just blew their record away.
Now we also realize that, with passing time, obviously the greatest generation is passing. And the same goes for Rosies.
Absolutely. That was a great day about 3 weeks ago, the record-breaking day. 2,000 plus women in bandanas. You never saw anything like it. And I saw little baby girls with bandanas, little 5- and 6-year-old girls, 20-somethings with Rosie tattoos. But I also saw the real Rosies riding around in their golf carts, including our friend Marge. And those people are tough, but they don't make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
They're very resilient, but they're not boasting at all. Yeah. So it was great to see them.
Now, you mentioned Marge,
yes.
The focus of our episode. Tell us a little bit about Marge.
Well, I was invited to give sort of a preview book talk with my friends at the Yankee Air Museum. And I went out there, I think it was in early August of this year, 2015. And as I'm talking, someone comes in slightly late, obviously with her daughter, this woman, sort of short, with a Rosie shirt on and so forth. And just these rosy cheeks, literally, and just exuded this sort of energy. And I just thought, that's an interesting person. She came up to me at the end, pulls her trouser up to show me her Rosie the Riveter socks. She's gung-ho, she's proud, but she's not boasting. And she said, you know how old I am? I said, 92. And I immediately just clicked, this woman has a kind of energy that I would love to get on film or to share. Right. And as you say, I hope she lives to be 120, but it's good to get people like that recorded. And she just exudes energy.
So you had a chance to sit down with her?
Yes, we drove out, Kevin and I drove out to a very pleasant afternoon in Ypsilanti. And I think she's lived in the same house for 60 years or something like that. And she lives on her own. She's very independent. And she entertained us. She was very hospitable, and she had a lot of stories. And we had to leave before we wanted to leave. You know, this woman is just a great person. Kevin will agree.
That's great. Well, we're going to take a look at Greg Sumner's interview with Marge, the Rosie the Riveter.
The lemonade was good too. We're in the home of Marjorie Walters, who has been kind enough to invite us in, and we're going to talk a little bit about her memories of growing up and particularly her time as a Rosie the Riveter. Could you talk about your early days before you moved to Michigan?
I was born in Superior, Wisconsin, and lived there till I graduated from high school, and then I come to Michigan. My mother died at Christmas Eve when I was 12. But I went through high school, and after she died, I had the whole house to take care of. I had 3 older brothers, but I was the only girl.
Was it a farm or what type of a
it's
setup? It was in town?
In town. But we had no basement, no a wood stove, and
Yeah.
I had to do the cleaning and the washing and the cooking and everything.
From the age of about 12.
Yes.
Good grief.
I just took right over.
What do you think of when you think of the Depression? Did it affect your family? Did it affect your lives?
Well, we didn't have much money because my dad didn't work in the winter. And my mother, we'd plant a garden in the field across the street and can, but it was very hard. One winter we had nothing but soup. And then you could go to the butcher shop and get a soup bone. And they'd leave a little bit of meat on it. And so we'd have that with our soup, bean soup, vegetable soup, or whatever kind of soup.
My impression was it was hard times, the Great Depression, but it was also neighborliness. Everybody was a family. It was also good times in a lot of ways. Is that the way you see it?
It was rough, but everybody was in the same boat, so you didn't pay any attention to it.
I've heard people say they didn't know they were poor because everybody else was poor.
Yeah,
I think.
that's right.
Yeah. You told me that you actually got to see President Coolidge as a young child. Could you talk about that?
And they had a parade for him, and I was in that parade. I was just a little kid. I don't know how old I was.
You were old enough to like a parade, though, right?
Yeah.
And you saw him? You actually saw Coolidge? Yeah.
He stayed there in the high school, and he'd fish in the Brule River, go out to Brule, which is another little bird, and so.
Tell me how you came to Michigan. Why did you come here, and what were the circumstances?
My brother had gotten a call or something from a friend of his from Superior, and he was down here. I don't know how he got down here, but he was down here. And he wrote or said that he had a job for Ray. And so he packed up in 1939, and there wasn't any jobs to get hardly. And so he come down here, and we gradually come down.
You followed.
Yeah.
Was he working for the car companies, maybe, or?
No, he worked at the United Stove Company.
And Detroit was the stove capital of the world, at one time. So
I worked there before I went to bomber plant.
how'd you get? Tell us about that job. Did he got you the job, or how'd you?
No, I had all 3 of my brothers worked there at one time. My dad come one winter down here, and he worked there, and I had a cousin working there, and they were looking for help, and I got a job down there, but then when the war, they couldn't get the metal, so they had to close the shop, and that's when I went out to apply at the bomber plant. I had to find a job, and went out there and got hired.
When did you start? It was.
When they numbered the wings, and I started when the wings were in the 30s. I don't remember exactly which one, but it was 30, so I was there until they closed the plant. Wow. So.
Were you working there before Pearl Harbor? Were you working there in 41?
No,
Okay.
but I remember Pearl Harbor.
What was that like? What do you remember about Pearl
My
Harbor?
brother had a rooming house. He had 7 roomers, and I helped with that too. Well, when the Pearl Harbor was attacked, they all went to their rooms and had the radio on a different station, and every time they heard anything, they'd come and tell everybody else what they heard, you know, and that whole night we did that. Just the boys went from room to room and tried to get the information out, so.
Did you ever see Henry Ford or perhaps Edsel Ford? Did you ever see them in the plant?
Henry Ford was out the plant one time. I saw him.
You saw him? Was he walking by, or what was
No, he was in a cart.
What is your memory of FDR coming to visit the bomber plant? Did you get to see the president?
He was in a cart or something, yeah. And it was, he come through the plant and
Was riveting hard for you to learn?
no, I don't remember of it being very hard. And we had small rivets, although we had some good-sized rivets too. The icebox rivets were frozen, and they were probably as big around as your finger. And we didn't get too many of those, but the little ones. And you went to school, you had to learn the different sizes of the different rivets, and the threads on screws. I used to be able to look at a screw and tell you how many threads there was on it. Not anymore.
I imagine you developed a camaraderie with the people you work with. Were you friends with them? Did you spend time out of the plant with them?
And there was one of my partners had her sister there too, and we'd go to the show or something in the evening, and of course we swung. We started out days, afternoons, midnights, back to days, every 30 days. And I liked the afternoon shift best because you could have time to do something yet. Because when you got home, 6, 7 o'clock at night, you were tired.
We'll be right back with more of Greg's visit with Marge. But here are some more scenes from Willow Run and Marge's record-breaking day honoring Rosie the Riveter with over 2,000 participants.
In 1944, every 55 minutes, 25 B-24s a day rolling out those 2 doors. Isn't that an accomplishment?
So, Greg, how's the book going?
Well, I am about 9 or 10 days into its release, and as my grandma would say, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they're kind of selling like hotcakes. Great. I've done a bunch of events, different venues, different crowds, but everybody seems to love the topic Detroit and World War II, so it's an easy sell, and I've been very pleased with the reaction so far.
It's a very important part of Detroit's history.
Absolutely.
And I know that having read the book, there's a lot of really great stories about Detroit that I think a lot of people haven't quite realized were part of the story.
Absolutely. Everybody knows Arsenal of Democracy, and often we don't go beyond that. And I do this panoramic look at Detroit during those intense years. And as you said, I try to tell stories and bring out the human side of what was happening when Detroit was the capital of the Arsenal of Democracy. It's a very complex story, and I enjoyed writing it kind of for a general reader. What was your first impression of this gigantic bomber plant the first day there? It must have been overwhelming.
Well, I don't know if I ever got in the full plant because it was a mile long, but it was huge. And of course, in the summertime, we had no air conditioning or anything. It was hot.
Were you happy with your rate of pay?
Oh, yes. I was getting 40 cents an hour at the Stoveworks. And when I went out there, I got $1 an hour, $1.05 on afternoon and midnight. So,
You were in the money.
yeah, I was getting rich.
Working at the bomber plant was more than a paycheck. I can definitely tell that. Did you feel a sense of pride about what you did there?
I was very proud to be working out there. And like I say, everybody was nice. Our particular department didn't have any problems that I know of.
So how did you and your husband meet? He worked also in the plant. How did you cross paths?
We just worked in the same department on the same wing, and I don't remember being introduced to him or anything.
And
But-
he asked you to go to the movies or a date or
Yeah,
have a Coke or something?
not right away, but yeah. And I don't remember how long he worked there. He didn't work as long as I did, of course, because he was overseas.
He got drafted or he enlisted?
He would have been drafted,
Yeah.
but he enlisted.
What was VE Day like in May of 1945? What do you remember?
VE Day was wild. Everybody was uptown in Ypsi, and we were slapping everybody on the back and and happy. And
How did you get involved with the Rosies, and what's it been like for you to be part of this Rosie movement going on?
I know when I was in something out the bomber plant there, and I come back to church the next day, and this guy brought his granddaughters up. This woman helped win the war. You must shake her hand.
What would you tell young people, my college students for instance today, what would you tell them about World War II? What would you like them to know?
Well, it was very serious at the time. And when I took history, we didn't get history taught like they do now. It was wars and dates. And I think it's more interesting now that I've been into it, and I think people should learn, because history repeats itself too.
You were separated from your future husband for quite a while. What was that scene like when you met him at the train station?
My brother had a car, and he went down there, and he was going to be smart and carry his duffel bag. He put his duffel bag on his shoulder and got all black and blue.
What is your secret for staying young? I know people are going to want to know that. What's your secret?
Good,
Obviously,
healthy
you don't
life.
smoke. You are active.
And I have a drink now and then, but
Yeah.
I'm not a drinker. And I remember my first beer, I was at my brother's house during the war, and that some of the guys got me to drink a beer, and I downed the hatch, and I wrote home and said how I had my first beer.
Greg, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for all of the work you did, and especially thanks to Marge for all her help. It's a great story.
It was an honor and a privilege, and I say that not as a cliche. I think Kevin will agree with me. It was a fantastic afternoon. And as you said, Rosie is a huge story in my book on Detroit in the Second World War, and it's that type of human story that I try to capture. And my book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I'm probably coming to your town because I've got about 20 talks set up over the next few months. It's a popular topic, and I love talking about it.
Fantastic. Greg, thank
Thanks,
you very
Pete.
much for joining us.
Thank you. Oh, do I
appreciate
get
it.
something here?
And would you like to give me
I
that gift?
feel like Bert Parks is going to jump out or something. Thank you. I will
you very
wear
much.
this proudfully.
All right. Thanks for joining us on Digging Detroit. Keep watching, and we'll keep digging.